Too often I hear the story about people's creativity just dropping off because, life gets busy and there's careers and there's all this external pressure. And I completely get it. I actually stopped doing anything creative for about 10 years of my own life. But while I get it, it just is so sad to me because it sounds so final when you say I used to be creative. It's very ending. But, today I have a very special guest on who has gone through that, but then has managed to reverse it and has gone on this wonderful journey to reclaim her creativity. And I'm keen to explore it. So hello and welcome. This is Creativity Uncovered. My name is Abby Gatling and I am on a journey to uncover how everyday people get creative at home, at work, at play, and everything in between. And my goal for this podcast is that by the end of it, you'll be armed with a whole suite of tried and tested ways to summon creativity the next time that you need it. So today, I'm very excited to be welcoming Kelsey McCormick to the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Abby. I'm excited to be here.
Yes, I'm keen for this chat because so many people do come on and just say, oh, I used to be creative, but I'm not anymore. And it kind of seems so finite, and I love to hear stories of people being able to kind of reclaim that and get it back into their life successfully. So I want to explore your story here. But before we get there, let's go back. And I want to find out about your creativity when you were growing up. What was the role of creativity in your life as a young person?
Yeah, I'd say I was always the creative one in my family. I was always kind of like the artistic one. I'm one of 4 kids, and I think everyone had their own kind of talents, and mine was definitely in the arts. So anything creative, drawing, painting. I think writing, I kind of got accepted into a really big journalism, well, not big, but it was like our school journalism program that only like 10 students per class got accepted into. And I went to a big public school in high school. I've always been into music. So I was always kind of the creative kid in my family. And I was always encouraged. Like, my parents aren't necessarily creatives. My mom's an accountant. My dad is an entrepreneur, so I guess he is more of the creative one. But yeah, they were super encouraging. And I think, did you grow up in the 90s as well? I feel like we grew up in the last kind of era of like just free play, I feel like. I can remember growing up and just playing in the woods and going around with the neighborhood kids. There was like no technology. I mean, we had Nintendo, but that was about it. So I just remember having a really creative, fun, playful childhood that had like so much freedom to it that I can't imagine kids have these days anymore.
Yeah. There's a lot of connectedness happening with technology and the internet and things like that. I think there's, from my observation of seeing my nieces and nephews and stuff like that, there's just less self-directed play.
Yeah. And I think that's so important for creativity, because to me, creativity is just curiosity. And when you have self-directed play, to put it in your words, I think that's where you can get so curious about what you like and what's out there. And I feel like things are much more structured nowadays. Maybe it depends on where you live. Like, we're in Australia now, which I feel like has a lot more of that freedom for kids because it's so safe. But previous to this, I lived in Los Angeles, and yeah, there wasn't a lot of that for kids there. It was very, in the car to the activity, back in the car to school. Just because of the safety things there.
Yeah. We do have a very outdoor society, which does, I suppose, change how kids play.
Totally. Yeah, there's so much recreation here, which is really nice. Yeah. So I'd say, long story short, I did grow up with a lot of freedom to play, a lot of creative, just like, intrinsic creative leanings that were super encouraged by my parents. I felt really lucky for that.
Yeah, definitely. And so you grew up feeling like you were a creative person. Did you have aspirations or intentions for continuing that, through into your adulthood or career?
I think so. I wanted to go to school in LA. I wasn't one of those American kids that like wanted the school with the sorority and the big football team. I was like, I want to be in a city where I can have access to creative career because I knew I would get more opportunities with internships and just the people I met and the events I would go to if I was in a big city. So I really only applied to one school that I knew I wanted to go to in LA and always wanted to work in music. That was kind of like the idea. Like, I'm going to work in music and like have a cool creative career. And that's exactly what happened. I worked in music and I had a super cool job and it was awesome through my 20s.
Yes, okay. And so moving forward from there, you started your career. Did that did that have any impact on your creative expression, changing from having it as like an interest to actually doing it for in exchange for money?
Yeah, I kind of did. I think I had a really narrow idea of what creativity was too, like to me, it was like working in a cool, like getting paid for, not necessarily getting paid actually, but it was the arts. It had to be the arts. But I ended up working in music, but in marketing. And that was super creative because you had to think up promotional ideas for like to sell tickets to concerts and festivals and tours. So you got to be super, super creative. But I think, yes, when you get paid for something that you love, it can kind of taint the experience because while I was backstage at like Coachella, it was still work, you know? So I think through that process, I probably did lose my love for music in the way that, and like the reasons I wanted to work for it in the first place, because it did just become like another job, I guess.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Sometimes it's easy to get out of balance when it's like that if you're not doing enough sort of creative acts for your own
Well,
self.
yeah, it was such an all-consuming job. Like the hours were crazy. Not only were you working 9 to 5, but then you were going to shows at night. So there wasn't a lot of room for fun outside of work. I think sometimes those kinds of cool jobs can come with a really big price tag as far as your life goes, they're very demanding. So I definitely kind of lost, even though it was a cool creative job, I definitely feel like I lost a lot of those things outside of work that made me feel creative.
Yes, okay. And so what was the impact of that? So we sort of spoke last time about you've had to make this, make steps to actually reclaim your creativity. Did you lose that because of this intense work pressure, or what happened to sort of remove creativity from your life?
Yeah, I think I kind of lost it through the jobs that I had. I had a job at an agency and they really deciphered after I worked at the music and job. I got a job at an agency for actually just a year before I left. But that job was like I was the account manager for the business that I used to work for. And they kind of had segmented creatives and non-creatives in the office. So like anyone on the accounts team was like a non-creative. They literally called us non-creatives, and anyone on like the art director, like anyone on the tools of Adobe were creatives. So I really got triggered at that job because I would often be referred to as a non-creative, especially by the art director that I worked with. And I just got a real bee in my bonnet. I was like, I am creative. I was always the creative one growing up. Like, what kind of happened there? And I think your soul kind of gets a little bit noisy when it feels like you're ignoring that creative child within. So I definitely just felt like a lot of frustration building up, like just from within, being like, you need to just like have fun. You need to relax. You need to play. So that voice got noisier and noisier. And then we decided to move to Australia in 2018. And that's when I was like, okay, I'm in a new environment. Now's the time to kind of re-explore what creativity means and what that looks like as a career or as not a career, maybe just as a life practice.
Okay. And what did that look like for you practically?
It took a while. It was very, I always use the word squiggly because it was just like all over the place, and I have a very squiggly mind anyway because I'm creative. Um, I have ADHD as well. So I tried temping at a lot of places. I was just trying to find my footing. And it wasn't until I had a baby in 2020 that I was like, oh, now's the time to go all in on what I want to do, which at the time was branded web design. I thought that would be like the most fun kind of creative job. And that's kind of how it all started with me doing Coming Up Roses. And also, I just found so much like time and space in Australia. Just like I mentioned before, there's like the beach and you're just outside all the time. And there's just a real spiritual vibe here that I feel like I wasn't connected to in LA. So I think that really influenced me to kind of go all in on something I'd been thinking about for a while, which was starting my own business.
Yeah, wow. Okay. So you mentioned becoming a mum. What was it about becoming a mum that was kind of that line in the sand where you knew you had to do something about it?
Yeah, I think the idea of going back to a job where your time is dictated by somebody else, when I like really wanted to be a present mom and be able to like make my own hours, freedom and flexibility was a big thing. But also, I just felt all this creative energy. I know that's not everyone's experience when they have a baby at all, but my personal experience was that after I had my son, I just felt super creative. Like I could do anything. Like I just grew a baby and had a baby and like also, he was sleeping a lot. He was a really chill baby. So I was like, what am I doing with all this extra time? I want to do something. And that's all that extra time I put into. I could have put it into laundry and dishes and cooking and housework, but instead I put it into um, growing my brand, which was super just fun and creative. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's funny you said that, yeah, having a baby has made you feel really creative, but that's actually come out a few times on the podcast. And I
Mm.
was thinking about that and I was thinking, actually, you literally are creating something when you when
Yeah,
you're growing
you
it,
just feel like a
breathing your
superwoman
life.
after. You really do. I mean, that was my experience again, but I think it could go either way, right? Like some people have the downsides of those hormones, but I just had like the super positive ones and felt like I could do literally anything. And that was like kind of the catalyst for start because I'd always been like, I want to do my own thing. I want to like have a creative job. I want to make my own hours and have time for my life, right? But I never had the guts to do it because I don't come from money. I don't have a safety net. It wasn't like, oh yeah, I can like have this massive runway. I'd been working in music for 10 years. I didn't in LA, like I didn't have a lot of money behind me to just like take a leap. But I think around the same time, my friend bought me the book The Artist's Way. Did you ever read that book?
Oh, no, but it's been recommended. So
Yeah, it's so good. If you love creativity, I think that's like the Bible for it. And that really changed my perspective as well. It's kind of this like whole practice on creativity and different activities you can do. Basically, the whole premise is you should write a journal every single morning called the morning pages, and then go on an artist date once a week, which is just like solo time by yourself doing something creative that you like. And just like putting those practices in every day just revealed so much about what I wanted to do and what I believed. And yeah, it just kind of changed my whole life, that book.
yeah, wow. So the you wanted to not go back to sort of like a 9 to 5 job.
Yeah.
You want to start your own business. But what was it about starting a creative business that was so appealing to you?
Yeah, I really honestly had what you said, this idea in my head. Like, I want to reclaim my creativity. I feel like it's been stripped away from me in these jobs that, yes, were cool and creative, but like I was always on the non creative side. Like, even though I find marketing creative, I think you have to have a very narrow point of view to think that like the only creative things are the arts. Like, I think accounting could be creative, like anything that's problem solving and, um, sparks your curiosity and brings joy and if you approach anything with a spirit of playfulness, that's creativity. But at the time I felt like really fragmented from that, and like the perception of me too was this like not creative person, and I was like, how did that happen? I was always the creative one, and I like value creativity so much. So yeah, so much of what I had written in my journals at the time was like, I really want to reclaim the spirit of play and creativity and fun. I think that I had lost I don't know, you said you had a corporate background as well. I think for good reason, they kind of strip that away slowly because obviously they don't want someone just like messing around. But yeah, was that your corporate experience as well?
Yeah, I often think back on that because a lot of the people who sort of come to this loggerheads with their career on this podcast is generally they've been working for these big organizations.
Hmm.
And that was my experience is that the bigger the organization, the smaller your impact as an
Mm.
individual. And you
Yeah,
perhaps individuality is not necessarily encouraged because they want everything to be uniform throughout the organization, which
right.
means that, you know, fresh ideas are quite often not
There's a
encouraged.
lot of stakeholders and opinions too. So even if you have a really good idea, there might be like other people that need to approve it or people who have a different idea. And I often found it was not always like the best idea that would move forward, but maybe the loudest voice or the person with the most pull. And yeah, I definitely feel like there were just so many moments of frustration and yeah, I just kind of wanted to create my own world, like my own immersive world. And that's what Coming Up Roses became. It was like this really fun, has like a garden theme. So everything's very like fun and immersive. I feel like the language of it, like you just kind of feel like you're in this really supportive, approachable world that feels like me, I think, like the best aspects of my personality I've like infused into it.
Yes, yeah. So coming up roses, that was your business that you launched at the time, was it?
Mhm.
Yeah,
It's
and
still
it's
my
still
business.
still
Yeah, yeah,
going
yeah.
now. Yeah. And do you think that the idea of having this organic theme to your business was inspired by your move to Newcastle?
Yeah, at the time I was actually living in Sydney. Yeah, I think I just like had it stuck in my head that like everything's coming up roses because I was having a bit of a hard time in Sydney making friends. I found it really cliquey. I found it just like hard to, I felt like when I first moved there, like, did I make a massive mistake? Because I have to like start all over. I was like on a good career trajectory in LA. I had a lot of friends. Like we're just starting from the beginning. We were living in a tiny apartment, but I just kept having that almost as a mantra. Everything's coming up roses. Everything's coming up roses. Like it's all going to work out. And then when it came to name my business, I was like, oh, that'd be actually a cool business name. Like this idea that like things are going to work out and like it's creative. And then I could almost like picture the world around it too. I was like picturing the colors and the garden theme and all of that and yeah, it just came together really quickly. So yeah, that's kind of the origin story.
That's great. And so you had to teach yourself web design and branding.
I actually took a course from a company called I Love Creatives. Actually based in LA. And it was a Squarespace course, basically how to build websites in Squarespace. And I just took that and like started building people's websites, charging like nothing at first, but just getting my bearings with the platform. And then eventually like really having a signature style and started to actually apply a lot of the things I learned from my 9 to 5 corporate job and like bring them back in. So things like how to connect with audiences, how to like position yourself so that you like attract clients, right? Those are concepts I learned when I was trying to sell tickets to like niche audiences. So just bringing a lot of these concepts into the business to like stand out and differentiate myself. And then once I did that, I started to grow quite quickly and kind of stand out in this space, I think.
Yes, yeah. And how have you found your journey as a business owner?
Yeah, it's squiggly. I'll say that again. Like it's so experimental. I think I'm coming up on 4 years now, and it's been so many different iterations, so many different things that I've experimented with and then shifted, or things I've tried and then like found a whole new world through. And um, yeah, I mean, it's been successful financially, which is amazing because that's like the main thing, right? You want to be able to like live a good life with your business. But it's also just been so amazing. It's connected me with so many cool creative people around the world. Like I feel like because of Coming Up Roses, I found my people, Whereas growing up, I was always kind of like, I wasn't weird. I had friends, but they were never like, it was really hard for me to connect with people. Same with college. Like, I just found like, I never quite found my people. And I feel like through Coming Up Roses, I have friends all over the world now. I was in Sweden last year and like met up with a bunch of girls in Sweden. And like anytime I go to LA, I have a bunch of friends there. I just did an event in LA and London and like had so many cool people come and met so many awesome people. And I feel like almost better than the financial success of it has been this like um yeah, this whole world that I've met, like this whole world of creativity that I've become a part of that I didn't even really know existed before.
Yeah, that's cool. I love
Mm,
that. And sort of like a
so
little
fun.
unexpected benefit from the business.
Totally. Yeah, but it has its ups and downs. There's times that are really hard. There's lots of self-doubt along the way. There's lots of creative problem solving. I think the better that you are at that, the more successful you'll be, right? Because there's going to be seasons that you're slower than usual or launches that don't go well. And then you have to pivot and problem solve and like be resilient. Again, things I feel like I learned in the corporate world, but are just so much more fun and playful when applied to your own business where you're making the rules.
Yeah, absolutely. I think even with my own business, it even though you go, okay, that time in the past in corporate life, that's been and gone, you've still learned so much along the
So
way.
much.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was like a boot camp for just like getting through it and like learning. And I mean, I think I got so much resilience from working in the music industry because of just like you get put through the ringer and it's just like nonstop and you're working with like a lot of big personalities and I'm actually really grateful for the way it kind of shaped me to be such a person who regardless of the day that I get dealt, I'm going to like figure it out and I'm going to like leave with a good attitude. Yeah, and all that I learned that I now apply to my business in my own way.
Yeah, 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 yeah. So you started this business as a way to be able to flex your creative muscle a little bit more. Are you now feeling in that creative space? Or are you feeling that you have more capacity to be creative?
I do. Not only do I feel creative in my business and the way that I like approach creating my offers and like my brand and my brand voice and creating content and writing my newsletters, really just trying to approach everything with a sense of fun and play. I have so much more capacity to do the things that bring me creative joy. So swimming, walking, journaling, playing with my son, being outside. Like I do these things in the middle of the day most days. And you don't have to tell anyone that you're oh, BRB, or I have to leave the office at X amount. You know what I mean? You just make your own schedule so you have all of this flexibility to be creative and to explore things in your own way. So I think that's really been such a gift of starting my own business. The
Yeah.
thing that's like I think it's like, again, so it outweighs the financial rewards of it because how you really can't put a price on owning your time.
Yeah, absolutely. For me, one of the things when working in my previous career was that, yeah, that sort of grind of run every day is sort of the same, going to the office, all the hours you have to work. And I often think like how it's so hard to run a business, but it is so rewarding in the fact that you can choose your own hours. You can work well, I certainly can work from anywhere as long as I've got my laptop and the internet.
Yeah,
It's,
totally. We've been traveling. I mean, in the last 12 months, we've traveled six of them, us as a little family unit. I have a son and a husband. And that's so cool. Like, I always wanted to be able to travel and work around the world and go see new places. And there's just so many amazing things that unlock your creativity when you can control your time that you just don't realize. Yeah, I couldn't imagine going back to, I mean, you never know, never say never, but I hope I never have to go back to someone else kind of dictating what I can and can't do with
yeah.
my time.
Yeah, 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 yeah. So that's the impact that, feeling more creative has had on your career. Has it impacted your parenting at all?
Yeah, I'd say it definitely has. I think this idea of like kind of having a life first approach with everything. So um the whole reason I started my own business was the fact that I wanted to be a present mom. And it's since been able to bring my husband on to work with me. So we have this amazing kind of co-parent relationship. We're still married. I know most people associate co-parent with divorce, but I mean co-parent in the sense of like he is working and I'm with Neil, or I'm working and he's with Neil, or we just do stuff as a family in the middle of the week, like go to lunch or go to the beach, because we've just created this creative life that like supports the family, and it's been amazing. I think that yeah, like it's just fun. Like it's just a really nice life. I mean, it's not perfect, there's times when it's challenging still, but yeah, I think being able to have so much time freedom has helped me be such a more present mom. And like when you're present, I feel like that's when you're the most creative.
Yes. And so how is it important for you, or are you encouraging creativity in your son?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah. We like really hope he's a creative kid. And I mean, if he's sporty, that's fine. But we'd both be way more stoked if he was like in a band or something. um, yeah, we're both very creative parents. And I mean, he's in piano. He's only 4, but he's in piano and he does jujitsu, which is kind of sporty, but I also feel like it's kind of like a creative sport. Um, he's super creative and we're super encouraging about it. He just wants to play all the time. And it's nice to have a kid just remind you about how intrinsic that desire is to just like kind of draw for a little bit or build some blocks and just like zoom a car around. Like there are these like things that we kind of have to do to itch a certain part of our brain that I think as adults we can forget about that are still just as important. Like going to the beach with him and building sandcastles is like the most fun thing ever. And when else would I do that if I didn't have a little boy to hang out with? So we went like Halloween, like doing Halloween yesterday. And I don't know, you get to like relive your childhood in a lot of ways when you have I mean, maybe when you have a niece and nephew you're super close with as well.
Mm.
Maybe that's even better because you don't have to be the disciplinarian as well.
Yeah, you can hand them back.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, we're very encouraging of his creativity for sure. And luckily, I think moving to Australia it was a really good move for that because again, he's experiencing kind of that like spacious, self-led play childhood that I don't think he would have received as much in LA where like he couldn't walk around alone. I mean, he can't right now, he's 4, but like as he gets older, or it's just a little bit more sketchy and not safe there.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Different times, different places, right?
Yeah, exactly. So I think a big part of moving here was about giving him that really wide open, spacious childhood that, yeah, that we had growing up.
Yes, so cool. So I love that, the fact that you've been able to, you know, go beyond the creative career, sort of be kind of pushed off it for a little bit, but be able to make your way back again. Uh, what would your advice be for someone who is at that point where they're just not that happy with their career and they want to find their way back? Any advice or any tips for people who want to try and take that next step?
I'd say for me, it was a spiritual problem more that, so I mean, like, yes, creative problem, but like for me, there was so much work I needed to do to like excavate why I felt so disconnected. Because to me, like, yes, creativity is about curiosity, connection, um, playfulness. And I just felt so disconnected and disassociated from that after being in a 9 to 5 that I had like what I called a spiritual problem. It was like I didn't have any connection with like this child within, this like playful child, like my little son that like I play and be silly with. Like I felt like I was closed off to that. So I'd say the first thing to do, like, don't quit your job and start a business necessarily, but the first thing to do is like figure out how you can reconnect with yourself and that inner child and like how you can solve that spiritual problem and find some sort of like connection with like not only yourself, but like the greater kind of creative force of the universe. For me, what helped with that was The Artist's Way. But there's lots of books, there's lots of activities. Like it could just be going for a walk in the morning every day, or doing a journal, or painting, or, there's so many things that you could do to kind of reconnect with that. It's probably not going to be found scrolling TikTok. It's probably not going to be found sitting and wishing that you'd have it, right? It's going to be found through action. So I'd say that's step one. And then once you reconnect with that, you're going to get told so many things that you forgot about or didn't realize. And it's going to be revealed like what you kind of are meant to be doing. I know that sounds very woo, but that's my experience. So I'd say if you feel disconnected, not sure what the next step is, it's a creative spiritual problem. And that's the first thing to address.
Yeah, I agree. And also to your first point there, that you don't have to quit your job straight away and try and do it, that you can do this work on the side and get yourself prepared to then make that leap. It doesn't have to be as scary as just, jumping off the cliff with both feet.
Yeah, I think take some sort of action where you're reconnecting with that creative source energy, wherever it is, however you do it. And once you do, you'll figure out what your next step should be.
Yeah, wonderful. Thank you so much. So what I'll do is I'll actually put a link to The Artist's Way in the show notes, as well.
That's a good idea.
The link to your business as well, Coming Up Roses. So if anyone wants to find out a little bit more about you and get in touch with your services, they can do that as well. So thank you so much for joining me today, Kelsey.
Thank you. It was so great to chat more about creativity, my favorite subject.
Mine too. And I also want to say thanks to everyone who's tuned into this episode of Creativity Uncovered. If this has inspired you to take that step, or just to begin thinking about your creative journey, I'd love to hear about it. So please do get in touch. And if you think a friend or a pal or may like this episode, please do share it on as well. So until next time, take care.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
If you've made it this far, a huge thank you for your support and tuning into today's episode. Creativity Uncovered has been lovingly recorded on the land of the Cubby Cubby people, and we pay our respect to elders past, present, and emerging. This podcast has been produced by my amazing team here at Crisp Communications, and the music you just heard was composed by James Gatling. If you liked this episode, please do share it around and help us on our mission to unlock more creativity in this world. You can also hit subscribe so you don't miss out on any new episode releases.